I'm about to start. Sorry. I'm gearing up to start the second semester of my 2L year. And I'm sorry, Erin, did you say you wanted me to answer those questions now or just introductions right now?
Just a little introduction as to who you are, what law school you go to, a little bit about maybe your undergrad, whatever you'd like to share.
Okay, perfect. Well, I did my undergrad at University of South Florida. So I was born in the Czech Republic, but raised in Florida. I've been here all my life. So I went to high school in Orlando, then spent some time in Tampa for undergrad, and now I'm in Gainesville. So I'm basically a Florida baby. And I think I eventually want to practice here, which was one of the reasons that I chose University of Florida, but I'll go ahead and pass it on and tell you a little bit more about that later.
Thank you so much. And Caitlin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caitlin Conway. I'm also a second semester 2L. I'm at the University of Pennsylvania, Carey Law School in Philadelphia. I went to Penn State for undergrad. I majored in English and political science there. So I've been in Pennsylvania for a few years now, but I'm actually from upstate New York, near Buffalo. And yeah, I'm hoping to practice either in New York or Pennsylvania, which again, we'll get into later in terms of why I picked Penn. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maynard Navarro. I am a 2L at Georgetown, and I did my 1L year at Howard, so I just transferred into Georgetown at the beginning of my 2L year. And I went to the University of Maryland for undergrad, where I studied government and politics. I double majored in communication. I'm from Maryland. My family is Central American, Guatemalan, and Salvadoran. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today and answer any questions you all may have. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you.
Hey guys, my name is Rahan Staten. I went to University of Maryland for undergrad, class of 2018. I go to Harvard Law School. I'm a 2L as well, second semester. And fun fact about me is I actually don't want to practice law. And I knew that while applying to law school. So that would be fun to talk about.
Thank you. And last but not least, Sabrina.
Hey guys, my name is Sabrina Mato. I was originally born in Cuba, but I've lived in Florida most of my life. I immigrated when I was 10 years old. I went to Florida State for undergrad and I majored in political science and international affairs, studied abroad a little bit, and then I took a year off. I worked at DOJ as a paralegal, and then now I am at the University of Virginia School of Law and about to start my second semester.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for the introductions. So I've got a list of questions that I'm going to ask you all. You can answer the ones that you see fit. And for all of the students here on this call, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. You will have time to ask specific questions to all the panelists during breakout rooms. But if you do have a more general question that you'd like answered by everyone, you can definitely throw that in the chat. Okay, so the first question I have for the panelists is, how did you choose which law schools to apply to?
I can hop in. So for me, it was not a super interesting way of choosing. I just started by taking the LSAT and seeing what I got on the LSAT. And then I used, my LSAT, my GPA, to create a list of schools that were reaches, places I thought I could get into. Unfortunately, a lot of admissions is really numbers based, and that's kind of something upsetting about law school admissions and applications. And so you'll have an opportunity to write a personal statement, a couple extra essays for the admissions to get to know you, but a lot of it is based on your test scores and your GPA. So that's kind of where I started. The other thing is I went straight through from undergrad, so I didn't have a lot of really exciting work experience between law school and college, which is another thing that law schools definitely consider. So I really relied on my LSAT score and my GPA to kind of create a list. I also am interested in public interest law. So I really wanted to go to a school that would set me up for a career in that field of law. And I actually didn't choose a law school that's known for being a public interest law school. So I can talk about that a little bit more later. But those were kind of the things that I had on my mind when I created a list of places to apply and actually went through the application process.
Just to follow up off of Caitlin, when I chose my law schools, it was specifically those law schools that had a very strong foothold in sports and entertainment. And again, although I didn't want to practice law, I just wanted to put myself in a position where I could meet either the powerhouses in the field and or potentially be mentored by them. So any law school that kind of gave me a better chance to have that experience, that's why. Because like, for example, even though I go to Harvard, I did not even apply to Yale because they're like not even remotely known for that. But I did apply to other schools that were even more lower ranked just because of that foothold in the entertainment industry.
I think it also kind of depends on like where you want to be at geographically. Like if you know that you want to be in like a certain region, like you should really be focused on like that region itself. For my kind of experience, was sort of all over the place, and I didn't go based off of scores more like Caitlin did. I kind of just went with, what is a school known for? Like, what can they offer me? What, what student orgs do they have? Like, what, how many professors are of color? Like, what are they working on that I could contribute to? So I kind of focused it more on like my interest and less on scores, but I can discuss that later as well.
Yeah, just adding on to what Sabrina said, I knew that I wanted to stay in DC, in the DC and the DMV area. And so I definitely tailored my list of law schools to those in this area. I applied to most DC law schools. I applied to the 2 law schools in Maryland, and I focused my search in this area just because I knew that I wanted to stay here post-grad and practice in this area.
Yeah, so I was looking at schools within the area, but also not knowing what area, in the geographical area, but not necessarily in the area of law. I didn't know at the time that I was applying, nor do I know now for sure what kind of law that I want to go into. So I definitely was looking at T40 because I wanted to go to a program that would really open up a lot of opportunities for me. It's unfortunate that in some ways those things still matter because you have schools that have amazing programs for a certain area of law, but maybe aren't the highest ranked, which I'm sure that we can all touch on a little bit more later. But I figured that I had to find a happy medium of a physical location that I liked with a ranking that would open up some doors for me once I graduated.
Perfect. Thank you so much, all of you, for answering that question. Just to clarify, I had a question in the chat. After a couple of questions to the panelists, we're going to go into breakout rooms. There'll be about 30 to 45 minutes in breakout rooms. So you can join each of the panelists in their breakout rooms. There'll be 2 to 3 people per breakout room. So you can go and ask specific questions about their law school, their specific experience, just to clear that up. Okay, so the next question I have is, how did you choose your law school over any other law school that you might have been accepted to?
I mean, I can go first since I guess I'm like the most recent like 1L. For me, I really cared about like the community and the culture. So I tried to make sure that all the schools that I got into, I was talking to the people that actually attended that school and asking them like, what is it actually like on a day-to-day basis? Like, do you have friends that you study with? Do you have like groups? Do you feel supported? Like, because that was a really important thing for me. Law school can be like very competitive just because you're graded on a curve and all these different other factors. So I wanted a community that was going to be like fun to be at. And UVA was supposed to be like the most like the funnest school. We have like softball and like all these other things that we do. We like go watch horse racing. I don't know, it's weird, but we really bond. I felt like during my 1L semester, we've really been able to bond. And that was one of my like turning points, as well as like obviously like scholarship and finances and the other like things that you have to consider.
I can go next. So ironically, University of Florida was not on the top of my list. I had applied there just because it was in the state that I was already living in. And again, if I knew that I wanted to practice in this state, then it would be a good option. But it was after I had submitted my application and after I'd submitted all my applications and I was really starting to create a serious list, because I think that something that's not often talked about is just like the mental journey that you go on as you're applying to law schools, everything becomes very surreal each step of the way. Once you take your first LSAT, once you take your last LSAT, once you submitted those applications, once you start hearing back. And so basically in that limbo of having submitted my applications and waiting to hear from a majority of the schools, I was really doing that additional research and trying to form my opinions about the universities that I had applied to. And UF just kept kind of creeping its way up because it was not too far from my family. My family lives in Orlando, and I'm very close to them. As I had mentioned earlier, I'm from Czech Republic, so most of my family is still there. So I realized that this might be the last time in my life that I can be close to them. And while I know that we have to prioritize our careers, I think that for me, my success came from being close to the people who would allow me to succeed in law school. And University of Florida being the best law school in Florida was obviously a good thing. And at the time, it was really rising in ranks. So I think all these factors combined were kind of what it ended up making this my one of my top choices. And ultimately, they also offered me a good scholarship that helped to make that decision, because I'm sure some of you will have questions about this, but it is an incredibly burdensome investment sometimes. So it definitely helped with my decision as well.
Yeah, relatedly, I mentioned I'm interested in public interest law. And so I really wanted to go to a school that I could afford. And so that was a big reason why I chose law school I did. I also mentioned that Penn is not the best, doesn't have the most robust public interest resources. And I knew that when I went into Penn Law. And if anyone wants to talk about that more specifically in breakout rooms, totally happy to. All it really means is that I just had to take on more of the heavy lifting in terms of finding jobs and stuff that some of my big law private sector colleagues didn't have to do. So it wasn't that big of a deal, but so the money, and then also I really cared about culture, kind of similar to what Sabrina mentioned. I was between schools that could offer me pretty similar things in terms of scholarship opportunities, in terms of what professors were studying, that kind of scholarship, job opportunities, things like that. So I really wanted to go to a place that was friendly, that was like not as competitive. I didn't want to feel like garbage for 3 years. I wanted to make friends. And so Penn has a really good environment. They really care about everyone being collegial. That's their buzzword that they use a lot. And it's true, everyone's very nice. So I cared a lot about that. And I'm really happy that I made that decision because I've met really great people. And I think a support system is really important to have in law school. So that's definitely something I think to look at when you're considering law schools.
Just to kind of touch on that real quick. One thing, I think the one thing I really like about HLS is the mobility. It's kind of like, I don't like being confined to like a single space. So I kind of wanted to go to a school that could at least, if I want to go to California, I could go to California. If I want to go to Chicago, I can go to Chicago. But more importantly than that, I actually chose HLS because they don't have grades. And like, I can honestly say, well, I've just never stressed over grades because we just don't have them. And I just think like that allows you to kind of enjoy the law school experience more when there's like that competitiveness is kind of taken out of the equation. And then it gives you a better chance to learn. It gives you a better chance to connect with your peers, you know, and it just, again, it just creates like a very much better environment.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, so I guess I'm unique in that I went through the law school application process twice, you know, my first time around for my 1L year and then the transfer process. But definitely, you know, picking law schools, I knew I wanted to stay in this area, but I also knew that I wanted to go to a school where I felt welcomed as a first generation student, as a minority. And that's why I chose Howard for my 1L year. I shared in the mission of Howard to develop social engineers. Similarly with Georgetown, Georgetown's clinical program, and Georgetown is a huge school and the faculty is also amazing. And so I had also, I tried to reach out to people at the law schools that I really was interested in, and, you know, attend events. Actually, when I was at Maryland, I went to a Latino pre-law day at Georgetown's campus, and it was a great experience. So definitely would recommend doing stuff like that. But yeah, that's sort of how I approached it.
Thank you all so much. Okay, my next question is, what was or what is your 1L year like? And is there anything that helped you through or is helping you through that first year?
Well, I guess I can go first since I'm still my 1L. I think it's been really rough. If I'm being honest, I'm not gonna like sugarcoat it and say like, oh, it's been fine and dandy. Like even with the support system, even with the friends in the study groups, my like spouse, actually not my spouse, my partner moved up to school with me, so I have that support as well. It is very tough. Like I was waking up at 7 in the morning and like reading all through the day, like until night, nonstop. So that's been really rough, but I've been doing a lot of like self-care. Like I enjoy cooking, so just prioritizing like what is important to me. I don't really exercise. I just like watch like reality TV. So like making sure I have like an hour of reality TV a day to just like, not think about school. I've been going to a lot of like vineyards around the little mountain towns that is like in Virginia, and drinking wine and stuff on the weekends when I can. So just making sure that you're taking care of yourself to be able to like perform in the classroom and like during your exams, because I think that's something that a lot of people don't prioritize in law school. They just think about academics.
Yeah, I would add on to that. I think something that's really, really important, especially for 1Ls, is to set like a really reasonable goal, like every single day, particularly during finals. It is not necessary, at least in my experience, to study from like 4 in the morning until midnight. And I know people who tried that and it doesn't work. So I think like being really kind to yourself and saying like, okay, a 10-hour study day, maybe too much, maybe I can do 8, like things like that, setting reasonable goals that is going to keep you fresh and keep you kind of on track, but not overwhelm yourself. And that's like really specific, but it was the first thing that came to my mind after what Sabrina said. The other thing that as a 2L, I think I wish I would have known as a 1L is that the pain is really pretty temporary. Like it's a long year, but it's really just the 1 year. Like 2L is hard in that it's work, but you can like really do things that you find more interesting and that you are passionate about. And that makes it so much better. Like you're not all taking the same classes that you may not. I had no interest in contracts whatsoever, but I had to take it. So now I can take classes that I really like. And so I think remembering that even though you have 2 more years, there's light at the end of the tunnel in terms of like the stress and like the overwhelmingness that is 1L. Just remembering that that does come to an end is really, really helpful, I think.
Just to comment, I think I had like the worst like 1L experience I could have ever asked for. Although I didn't have to worry about grades, the day I got accepted into Harvard, my dad had a knee surgery, but came out the surgery with a paralyzed throat. And that's like a very like weird, I still don't know how that happened, but it happened. Saying that to say, because I was remote, I was actually a full-time caregiver while also going to school full-time, which sucked. And I think like that, I think I kept track. I think I averaged like 4.3 hours of sleep per night throughout the entire semester because he would wake up constantly. Saying that to say, I just think the number one thing that I took away from that semester is if I didn't build a community that supported me in whatever trial I was facing, there was just no way I was going to accomplish that semester, let alone even think about continuing law school. So you can even kind of take this advice for undergrad as well. Just really make sure you have a community with your fellow peers, classmates, and definitely like faculty and staff, because those are the people like who go to, just go to bat for you, So just definitely make sure you build your community.
One other thing that I will add is I tried to find something that I could like volunteer for that was like the reason why I came to law school. So I found like an immigrant organization like that was local, and I was working with like refugees, helping them do like their permanent resident applications. So like just doing that like a couple hours a week was very much like, this is why I came to law school. Like, it's not just about the books. It's not just about like the cold call that you had or the exam, like you're actually helping people. So I think finding something that's very, where you can connect to like the community as well was helpful to stay grounded.
So I just like to parse the question because I think we've really touched on like what helped us through, but just to answer what the 1L year was like a little bit more, I think that a lot of these stereotypes that you hear, in some sense, they do come to fruition, but I think it's about how much you let it get to you or how much you, I guess, almost actualize them, if that makes sense. And then I also think part of that is what our 1L year was like in the, the era of COVID. That definitely, I don't know how far along everyone here today is, but for the coming years, it's probably still, your law school experience or just your academic experience is going to continue to be affected and shaped in some ways by it. But I think the important thing to remember with that is to be generous to yourself. The fact that any of us are involved in higher level academics at this time is incredible. And I think that we have to give ourselves a little more credit than we often do. And I say that from a place of having had, I had my dean as my property professor my 1L year, which was incredibly intimidating. And to Sabrina's point about cold calls, that was always like, I was shaking in my boots. But one of the big things that she really tried to impress on us was that law school is difficult no matter what. 1L year is difficult no matter what. And then we have to maneuver it with an additional challenge. So I think the biggest thing is sometimes just stepping back and really seeing how far we've come versus how far we have to go. And I would actually challenge Caitlin's point to the light at the end of the tunnel of 1L year, because I think that the challenge continues just as hard, but in a different way. So just know that, yes, the challenges that you face in 1L year are going to be completely reshaped, but it is going to continue to be difficult. But I think that's something that you really want to be considering as you're thinking about whether you want to go to law school or not. It's an incredible investment, not just financially, but mentally, and really just lifelong. There's so much that you can do with a law degree. And as Rehan spoke on not wanting to even practice law, I think that just goes to show that there's so much that we can do with this. But I think it's important to consider with the rigor that you experience if this is really something for you. And that's not to sound pessimistic, but I think that is one of like the biggest hurdles. And in some ways, 1L year might teach you that lesson, but not to get too pessimistic, I'm happy to turn it over to somebody who has maybe a happier spin on that.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna add one thing. When you mention law school is hard generally, absent the pandemic, also was something that's like hard to remember, at least for me it was in my 1L year, is that law school is hard for everybody. I think like there's a lot of self-doubt that comes with being a law student, and like law schools love to have, like at least my law school did, like a little imposter syndrome speech at the beginning, like kind of like reminding us that we all deserve to be there. But like that just goes right over your head because you're freaking out. You think like, I'm so behind, everyone else has their stuff together and I don't. And so I think that was mentally my hardest thing to deal with during 1L. And that has definitely gotten better for me as a 2L. Like still happens, but now at least I feel like I have some like solid ground under my feet more so than I did as a 1L. So I think that definitely like give yourself a little bit of time to like feel scared, but then realize like, okay, everyone's in the same boat. Everyone, no matter what their life experiences are, has never been a law student before. So everyone's coming at this with the same level of experience and the same like terror that you may feel during your cold calls as well. So just something to keep in mind that plagued me my 1L year.
No, you're absolutely right. And if I may add something, because with the balance and sustainability that you talked about earlier, I was just reminded as you spoke again. I think that many people want you to believe that you come in and your 1L is just locked in a room or locked in the classroom working. And it's not to say that that isn't possible. That isn't how some students do it, or that isn't how it's going to be presented to you. But I think the biggest thing is you have to find a balance. You have to set your priorities. And this goes to Caitlin's point about setting up goals for the day. If you want to go to the gym, you'll find time to go to the gym, be it at 5 a.m. and then having to go to class, you'll find that time. If you're passionate about playing an instrument or, I don't know, watching the football game that night, you can find time to do it, but you are just going to have to make sure to set yourself up for that and be able to maneuver your day accordingly. But I think that is incredibly, incredibly important to the sustainability within all of law school, but also especially in your first year, because you're really getting your footing. And for an example, I'm a really passionate beach volleyball player, and I thought going into law school, I was never going to be able to play. I thought I was basically done. And I play more volleyball now than I probably have even in undergrad. And that was just about finding ways to find time for those things that I enjoy doing. Like Sabrina was talking about her reality TV shows. You can find ways to fit that into your schedule. And it's not easy, but it's not impossible. And I don't think anybody should tell you otherwise.
Great. Maynard, I would love to hear your last thoughts on this, and then we can move to our next question.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I know imposter syndrome, the term imposter syndrome was brought up, and it's definitely true. It's real. But just making sure being able to ask questions and keeping an open mind, I think is really important. And it really helped me in my 1L year, especially in a completely remote environment. It was a little bit more difficult to reach out to professors or reach out to classmates, but just being able to ask those questions and get the help that you need is what helped me my 1L year.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing your tips and your experiences. My next question is, what experiences did you have in undergrad that helped you be successful in law school? And not to put them on the spot, but I did a pre-law program with Sabrina and Barbara. So if you want to shout out FSU's pre-law program, please feel free to do so. But yes, please speak to some of the experiences you may have had in undergrad that helped you.
I guess I can go first. So yeah, FSU does have a pre-law program, and it was really great. They like paid you like a couple $100 to go there and take some classes. I don't remember the specifics, it was so long ago, but it was really helpful because you see like the structure of like what a law school classroom is. So, like you get to experience a cold call, and like you get to see how you have to like read the cases and how to dissect them and whatnot. So that was helpful. But I think another thing that was really helpful for me was I interned and I actually got like a part-time job at the public defender's office. And then I also did work with like local firms to see what lawyers actually do, because a lot of the times we have like this perception of like a lawyer is just in a courtroom and they are, arguing back and forth and whatnot. But a lot of it is just emails and just like getting to see, like, if you want to be a criminal law attorney, like getting to see an undergrad, this is what they do on a day-to-day basis. Like it's a lot of like jury selections or, whatever they do during that time will help you narrow if you really want to go to law school or not. Because if you don't even know what they're doing on a day-to-day, I think it's hard to go through law school and then realize that during like your 1L summer internship. So I would definitely recommend like getting into an office and being in those spaces so you can get those connections and see what it's like.
Yeah, so I had a few law related experiences during the summer as a college student. And those were very helpful, not only in terms of seeing what the work is actually like, but also just in like a really practical sense, since I didn't have any work experiences like between college and law school. And also it was 2020 when I graduated undergrad. So there wasn't a lot of in-person opportunities and hardly any virtual internships for people. So having that experience to actually talk about in interviews, even like 2 years later, was really helpful for me. So anyone who's thinking of going straight through, I would definitely try to get some good experience under your belt in undergrad. The other thing is you don't have to, it doesn't have to be in an area that you think you might want to actually do as your job. I worked for a judge as an undergrad, which means I just followed the judge around and didn't do anything because you're not qualified to do anything. So that was a good experience. And then I worked at a domestic violence organization that helped out women and non-binary people who were experiencing domestic violence. So that was really helpful. I did not want to practice family law at all, but I got a lot of really good experience in family law to talk about. The other thing is I did mock trial in undergrad with Erin at Penn State. So that was a really great experience, just sharpening oral advocacy and public speaking experience, really invaluable, really great to talk about in interview. Looks very good when you're applying to law school, was asked about it a lot. And anything that can really help you work on your reading comprehension and writing abilities, I think is really important for law school. And I'm thinking about the LSAT too. So humanities classes where you have to write a long paper, legal writing looks very different, but if you can just get a chance to practice your writing skills generally, I think that'll help you out a lot.
One thing I want to speak to is kind of just getting away from like those points. I think the best thing that I did for myself in undergrad was kind of just work on networking. As in, by the time I left undergrad, my entire college knew me. I was in RHU, and like they really like went to bat for me. Like I wouldn't have became the commencement speaker. I wouldn't have gotten on the dean's cabinet if it wasn't for them just really pushing me. As in, when I say like pushing me, like they literally like did all the work for me essentially. Where they were like, hey, there's something open. What about Rahan? What about this? What about him? What about him? Every time like there was something to do, like they made sure like I saw it. And having like just having the community behind you and just working on building that, because at the same time, it does take like skill to kind of practice that, especially walking into rooms where you don't know anybody. And the greatest gift anyone could kind of have is like being able to walk into a room and leave with people cheering for you. It's like, it's not like, hey, I like him, but no, I want to see him or her succeed in whatever they do. So saying that to say, I really would like urge you all to just really make sure, one, just be kind, but two, just like work on just building relationships at a very high level.
Yeah, so as Erin mentioned, I did do the FSU Summer for Undergraduates program with her, and I think that was one of the most invaluable experiences through undergrad in regards to law school very specifically. The program is literally tailored to giving you law school exposure, and I know that there were some students that took that they were participating in the program and ended up realizing, oh, I don't want to go to law school, which I think experiences like that are just as valuable, because at least you put your foot in the door, you figured it out. And I would plug that program very hard, because it's one of the few programs in the nation that are geared for an internship and experiential program that are for pre-law students. Most legal related opportunities come once you are in law school. And at that point, you've already pull the trigger. So I would say that's a great opportunity, and I'm happy to speak on that more to anybody more specifically later. Another really great experience that I did was with a law firm called Byrne Foreman. They also have a pre-law internship that I actually found through a friend of mine that was in law school, and she was looking for her 1L summer internships and came across it. And that was like another needle in the haystack, because these pre-law internships that are in law offices don't exist as readily as ones once you are in law school. So I would definitely recommend those two experiences very specifically. And if you're doing any digging and you find these opportunities with law firms, then I would definitely take those as well. And in terms of in undergrad specifically, I majored in international studies and literary studies. I came into University of South Florida with the aim of doing political science, and then I kind of rerouted to international studies because I just wanted the international scope a little bit more. And then I added literary studies because I knew in law school there's a lot of writing. I really enjoyed literature, so I figured that would just help. And as Caitlin mentioned, legal writing is like a whole other beast, but if you're able to write well, there's no way it's not going to help you in recrafting the way that you're supposed to write. So I think that was a great experience. Definitely any speech and debate, mock trial, those kinds of oratory experiences are great. And then there's also some student orgs that are specifically pre-law, like Phi Alpha Delta pre-law fraternity. That's something that I was involved with in undergrad, and it was like a foot in the door for when I got to law school, because then they have the legal chapter, or like the full-blown law chapter, and it actually fizzled out at University of Florida pre-COVID. So now I'm the president at our university, and I'm just kind of trying to bring it back. And really what it does is connect you with a lot of other law schools and legal practitioners within your area. So that's great. And that's something that you can start as early as undergrad because of that pre-law chapter. So I would definitely recommend opportunities like that.
I can say a couple things. I went to the University of Maryland for my undergrad. I graduated in May 2019. And during my time at Maryland, I took classes with Professor Spivey related to law. He taught some of them in a first year law school sort of format, and I thought it was really interesting. And that made me want to pursue some sort of legal internship, because I knew I wanted to get some experience in the field to see whether it was something that I could see myself actually, going to and applying to law school and actually, becoming an attorney in the future. So definitely, as some of my colleagues on the call have mentioned, just getting some sort of exposure to the legal field in an internship or through different classes or professors, I think is really important. I was also part of PAD, of Phi Alpha Delta, the pre-law chapter at UMD. And it was great. I was able to meet a lot of my classmates who were also interested in law. And I was able to take practice LSAT exams, which really helped when it came time to actually taking the LSAT and applying to law school. So those were some of the things that helped me when I was in undergrad, because as I'm a first generation student and I had no lawyers in my family. So just trying to, build my network, and also trying to just get as much information and exposure as I could was really important to me.
I think if I may add one thing, I think Trials is a program that is like in between like NYU, Harvard, and like I don't know what other school, but it's like the FSU program, but just like in New York, I think. And then I know Cornell and I think maybe Duke also do summer pre-law programs as well, just from like my friends that have done them before. So if you guys want to look into that, those are the ones that I've heard around.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'll look into those and make sure to share as well. So my last question for y'all kind of ties in. So do you have any suggestions for kind of how to find internships and programs in law school, and also, how to find them in undergrad, how maybe you found some of the opportunities that you were just speaking about?
So so undergrad first, I definitely felt like intimidated trying to find internships in undergrad. So if anyone feels the same way, it's okay, it'll work out. I ended up, because I went to Penn State, Penn State's pretty rural, there's not a lot there. I usually went home to Buffalo to do summer internships, just because it's more of a city, there's more opportunities. And a quick Google search, honestly, is pretty good. Just do some research. If you have any personal connections back home, any like family friends who are lawyers, any parents, friends that I know not everybody knows people. I really didn't. So, but just kind of, anything works. It doesn't even have to be directly related to law. One of my internships was like a social work internship, and I just was in a courtroom watching attorneys. So I wasn't working with attorneys. And so that was still really good experience. So I think anything that kind of gives you guidance and gives you valuable skills, like how to be part of a team, maybe if you have like an assignment to talk about, anything like that, I think is really helpful. And I know that's not a lot on how to find internships, but that's kind of just what to look out for. In law school, I felt like 1L summer was like kind of like everyone was trying to find a job. And because a lot of 1Ls don't work for firms, they have very limited spots. A lot of people were going to work for judges or for like public interest organizations. And so it can be difficult, at least in my experience, when everyone is kind of working for those slots to get an internship you really want. So my piece of advice for working for 1L jobs, A, is use like the law school resources that are available to you. There should be a lot. All law schools want their 1Ls to have jobs over the summer. So I know Penn did a lot of help with some of my friends who were struggling to find jobs, like helping them get placed somewhere. And B, like, don't be picky. Like, I didn't get a job that I really loved, and it's not in the area of law I want to practice. I want to be a public defender. I was working in landlord tenant law doing eviction defense. And so I wasn't super excited about that, but it ended up being a really great experience and something that helps me get a PD job next summer. So just be open, be like, available for opportunities to come, and be like very on top of it, like kind of keep applying, keep looking, like just be very, cast a wide net, and just, take any experience you can, really, I think, because it never hurts to have experience, no matter what it is.
I'm currently going through that process, and it's really nerve-wracking because I've only heard back from like 3 things that I've applied to, and I'm like, I don't even have an offer yet, but it's okay. It'll be fine. It'll work out. But yeah, that process has been really stressful, and I am using, the school's resources. I think something that I found was helpful that might be helpful to you guys in undergrad. I used LinkedIn a lot, and I would just connect with like random people that were doing like what I wanted to do. And I would just call, like, be like, oh, can we schedule a call? And then through that, I'd be like, oh, do you guys have any like openings for internships, or do you have any more recommendations for me? And then they would usually connect me to like their like internship office or whatever it was. So I think LinkedIn was really helpful. The Career Center was really helpful. And like, like how Rahan said, like the connections that you make with networking, if you just have like one person at that firm or like that place where you want to have an internship, and you can reach out to them and be like, hey, I'm really interested, like, odds are they're going to put in a good word for you. So just like keep building on those sorts of connections.
Yeah, so just to add to what Sabrina was just talking about with those connections, I think a lot of times opportunities can fall out of something that you wouldn't have even thought. So networking is incredibly important. And I think honing those skills in undergrad is very valuable, because once you get to law school, you're learning a lot of the substantive, but I don't think those social skills, unless you're involved in organizations like certain co-curriculars that we have, or you're involved heavily in extracurricular activities, you're maybe not getting that social polishing that you may need. Especially if I would say if you're maybe a little more introverted, or if just really, I guess, social settings aren't your thing. Unfortunately, it's something that is just key to the practice. So I was very fortunate that I kind of had an internship that I maintained throughout undergrad fall in my lap when I was still in high school, because I was involved with a student organization, a leadership organization in high school that connected me with the consulate of the Czech Republic here in Florida. And then through a leadership conference that we were hosting, I was in contact with him, and eventually he offered me an internship that grew into me being his executive assistant for a few years throughout undergrad, which was amazing. And through that, I was connected with other immigration organizations, and it really spiraled, which is great. And it may not always happen that way, but I was very fortunate for that. And I think that sometimes you see that in law school too, when you're networking, the attorneys that you meet, if you're keeping in contact with them. And I actually had somebody once tell me, and he did marketing for a big law firm, and he told me that you should be increasing your network by at least 2 people a week, which sounds so daunting, and I don't even maintain that. But sometimes I'm reminded of it, because I feel like if I can even try to grow my network by a few individuals a month, then if I need to reach out to somebody for any particular reason, then I can look towards that network. And a lot of times you will connect with these attorneys, and eventually their law firm is looking for an intern, and you already have an in. You're able to reach out to them and say, hey, I saw that you're offering an internship. I'm really interested. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? And then they might be able to, like Sabrina said, give you a referral or put in a good word for you. And when hundreds of people are applying for internships, that's what's going to make you stand out. I had an offer right now in my 2L year that I received, and I basically surpassed the interview process because of an attorney that I already had an existing relationship with. And the reality of our field is that it's not always what you know, but who you know. And so I think that it's really important to take advantage of those opportunities when you can seek them out.
Just to follow up on that point, the reason why I said like what I said earlier about like how to prepare like when you're like an undergrad about in regards to like networking, I just think it single-handedly gave me like a leg up over most of my peers, even at HLS. I came into HLS with one goal, and that was I did not want to lose any opportunities simply because, people who came from better backgrounds than me had more resources at their disposal. So I said, well, let me even the playing field by networking all the time. So when I was an undergrad, so I guess my specific advice to you would be literally, 1, be kind to everyone, but 2, really kind of just tell people like what you want to do and build those relationships. And people will go to bat for you if you're consistent, if you're kind, and if you just ask questions about them and their life and, like what's going on with them. And literally like almost every single time that literally just kind of came back full circle. Even just to give you guys an example, I was doing like the sports law clinic. So basically you just go anywhere you can in the sports world and work over the winter, which is what I'm doing now. And a lot of the people who I can honestly say had a lot more resources than I did had to get referrals by me to get their positions, because I pretty much knew everyone where they were going. Even as an HLS student, it was still hard for them. And even for during 1L, when I was applying for internships, I actually didn't have to apply to any firm. Like I had all of the firms beforehand, because even though I didn't want to practice law, I said, well, you never know what happens. So let me go build relationships with people at law firms. And I did that with almost like over 70 people. Literally, I think the number was about 70. And so I had like offers from like law firms before 1L even started. And then not even like only that, I referred a lot of my friends to these people, and a lot of them, that's how they got their 1L job. So again, just echoing what everyone else said about those strategies as well. But I can't like just honestly like echo enough that really becoming a really good networker is going to be very practical, especially when you're going up against anybody who's coming from a background that has a lot of resources, a lot more than you do. And last but not least, networking again, when you do become an attorney one day, you want to be like very good with your clients. And so it's practical in that nature too.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. Okay, so that concludes the panel portion. We're going to move into breakout rooms now. So you'll have the opportunity to join both breakout rooms. We have about 45 minutes left. So you can spend about 15 to 20 minutes in each breakout room. We'll give you, we'll send a chat when it's been about 15 minutes and you can switch breakout rooms. So you will have the chance to go to both breakout rooms. Don't worry. So at this point, we're going to stop recording here and we're going to give you